Well, and to his point,
Yes.
we were going back through the years and just kind of looking at, all right, when have the Niners been good, the Giants been good, and the Warriors been good all together? And probably the best recent example of that would be the early 2010s. But you had the Giants, 2012, they won the World Series. That's when the 49ers made the Super Bowl, but the Warriors were on the come.
Right.
So by the time that the Harbaugh era had faded, his last year was 2014, the Warriors won it in 2015. So there was never really any big overlap, I believe, like there is now, to where both sides have legitimate aspirations, both specifically the Niners and the Warriors have legitimate aspirations to win a championship. And that's why this year, I think also with the stages of their, in the Warriors' case, dynasty, in the Niners' case, just their run of success, albeit less than a Super Bowl, I don't know if we've ever been at this point to where we've been at two pretty clear inflection points successively, at the same time.
Right. And that's kind of why I think it's, for me, really exciting. The Durant years for me, I don't know how they were for Warrior fans. They weren't exciting for me. We knew what was going to happen. The number one thing I kind of want from sports is to find out about the unknown, to see what happens with these teams. The Warriors teams of the Durant era, not a lot of intrigue. Let me ask you this. I'm going to read this text from the Xfinity Mobile text line, Evan. You tell me if you think this is a troll.
Okay.
All right? Draymond Green and CP3 have stole my excitement for the Golden State Warriors. I've never been down on him like this in 30 years.
Wow.
Just Draymond in general. I love the Warriors, but I don't like him anymore, and I don't like CP3 either. That's got to be minority. See, in the minority. And see, when I look at Chris Paul, I put him in, he ups everything because there are a lot of Warrior fans that don't like him. And Chris Paul here makes more things unknown. How's it going to work? Is he going to get along with everybody? Will he start? Will he finish? To me, all that adds incredible excitement to the season. I get you might not like him. I get that. And the 510 saying, no, I'm serious. I'm not trolling here. I've been a Warrior fan my whole life. I'd be interested to see if any other Warrior fans feel that way. Because you know me, I'm objective. I'm not a hardcore fan. No. So I'm looking at the Warriors season from just an excitement level, from a level where they could be working out well. It might not work. There's so much unknown. That's what, to me, makes it exciting.
Yeah, it could be a drastically great or bad season. I think that's what's interesting about it. But to the 510's point,
yeah,
I think that statement that both Draymond and CP3 have made the 510 down on the Warriors more than 30 years, I think that's probably a minority opinion. But I bet you'd find a lot of people that are out on either Draymond or Chris Paul individually. Just because of what Draymond did at the beginning of last season and his comments at the end of the year reflecting that maybe the year was on him. And then also with Chris Paul's history with the Warriors. I view Chris Paul, it's kind of funny. I view Chris Paul as a winning basketball player. And everywhere he has gone, he has dramatically improved their winning percentage, from the New Orleans Hornets, where he was first drafted, then to the Los Angeles Clippers, where he went,
right,
and then to the Houston Rockets, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and now the Phoenix Suns. Wherever he's gone, yes, he hasn't won a championship, but that team has been a good regular season basketball team. It's kind of funny because I think Mike Dunleavy Jr. has spoke to this as well. Chris Paul's a solid player. You know what you're going to get from him. But I think because of the Draymond factor, which is the conflict and the personality, the different wild card that is Draymond Green, that also is kind of being applied to Chris Paul, because I think a lot of Warriors fans don't view him as the player, but they view him as the personality that we see on the court. And they don't know how that's going to work with someone like Draymond. I think it all makes sense. I think the way that they've set up this offseason, even though I like Jordan Poole and I'm sad to see him go, I think that the Warriors have made some great, smart decisions to line themselves up to make a go at it this year. But for some reason, the external, the I don't know, the relationships are what everyone seems to be focused on, and that's where Chris Paul doesn't make sense to a lot of people. I think he's going to be able to help the team, whether he's a starter, whether he's a bench player, whether he's closing, whether he's not. But for some reason, because of the relationship that Warriors fans have with Chris Paul, they don't believe that he can just automatically assimilate.
I get that. And people got mad at me. Not mad, but I think it's also up to the core to assimilate for Chris Paul. And I didn't think it was a crazy statement, but I think that they got to be inclusive with Chris Paul. They have to be. And I said this sentence before, and people went nuts. They have to kind of treat Chris Paul like he is a champion. That doesn't mean you give him respect that he didn't deserve, but Chris Paul can't walk into that locker room and feel like he's beneath those other three guys, even if he is. And he is, and we know it. But they've got to figure out a way to make sure Chris Paul knows that he's part of this team for the whole year, and there's a goal to be accomplished, and that they can try to do it kind of together.
Yeah, and I think Klay Thompson, from the sound we heard yesterday speaking about Chris Paul on Paul George's podcast, I think he's trying to set the stage for that. He's talking about how Chris Paul is going to put the ball right in his shooting pocket. He's going to line up the seams. He's going to get Klay Thompson so many more open looks. He's a smart basketball player. He's a winning basketball player. Before they've even had the chance to step on the court with him, although maybe they've run kind of these mini camps that Klay was alluding to in a group message with the rest of the guys, it seems like they're trying to set things up for Chris Paul to feel comfortable because they know how important he is going to be if they want to win a championship.
Yes, absolutely, positively. That's the way I'm kind of looking at it. And the other thing I was thinking is, are the Warriors better or worse than they were last year? I could see it going either direction. I think there's a scenario in which they're going to miss Poole more than they think. They may get hurt more than we hope they're going to get hurt, or we hope they won't get hurt. And they don't have as good a year as last year. I also think that Chris Paul could fit, that the load management is done for all four of those guys, and they try to keep them relatively healthy, and they stay healthy. And the next thing you know, the Warriors are a 50-win team again, and they have action in terms of maybe going far. Because and I'm thinking, Evan, if you're me, all right, let's say you're me.
I'll try to be.
And I'm honest to God, I'm like, I could see them being better, for sure. And I could see them not being better. So why wouldn't a guy like me just say, Warriors are going to be good this year? Warriors are going to be really good this year. I think they could make a run. I didn't think they could last year, but now you bring Chris Paul in, you get some youth in there, Corey Joseph. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna be a positive Warrior guy this year. They can do it. They can do it, Evan. They can do it.
I'll hold you to that, and I'll remind Guru of that next week when he's back.
You do realize that a lot of Warrior fans would really hate if I did that.
Well, I think because they believe you'd be trolling.
No, I don't know.
I don't think you are, but that's probably how it'll sound to people.
I kind of meant I could just take the easy way out and start rooting for them.
But I do think the same reason that you believe in them is also the reason why they could falter, which is age and experience.
Exactly.
Because to me, and Mike Dunleavy Jr. on the Dubs Talk podcast with Monty Poole discussed how he doesn't think they have too many young players, which is a reference to last season, and how they might have overloaded themselves with youth in the past. So for me, bringing in Chris Paul, exit Jordan Poole, the re-signing of Draymond, it feels to me like this team this upcoming season has a higher floor than last year. I don't know if their ceiling is higher, but I feel like they are more solid and grounded and aligned, which last year, at the beginning of the year, they were hoping that Kuminga could take a huge step. James Wiseman, Moses Moody, much of the younger kind of second timeline part of that franchise that's no longer around. mostly,
right,
was going to help them win in the regular season. They're not relying upon that anymore. Now, it's hard to separate age from this because that's going to lead to injury, it's going to lead to load management, and it's going to lead to you potentially losing or punting on some regular season games. But I do believe that if we're looking at the last year's Warriors as a 44-win team, I don't see why their floor can't be higher than that this year. I don't see why they can't have their floor be 44 wins with the potential to be a 50-win team, which last season would put you in the top 3 and get you a home court playoff series.
Exactly. I do think they're going to need to have a better regular season to win it next year. I just don't think it's realistic that they're going to be able to win it from the 6th spot. I thought that put them in a tough spot. But if the West is like it was last year, where there wasn't a ton of separation, then I think you want to try to get back to, or just get up to 4 and make sure you're hosting in that first round. Pat is in Foster City. What's going on, Pat? How you doing?
Good. Hey, thanks for taking the call.
Yes,
and if you get to Ireland, Matt, you got to go to Galway if you can. Great place to visit. So,
yeah, this is my third. This will be my 3rd trip to Ireland. This is all golf. I've been to Galway in the past, and man, that is a great place.
They got a guy over there that does a Neil Diamond imitation that you'd swear was the real Neil. You can't understand him between songs because his Irish accent is so strong. And then he sings, and you close your eyes, and it's Neil Diamond. There's nobody. I mean, it's kind of an amazing thing. But
Belinda
anyway.
was mine till the time that I met her. All right, go ahead.
So the reason I was calling, you were talking about shooting percentages of Steph yesterday and the free throws during the regular season, the playoffs, and whatnot. And
Don't talk about that.
You've heard the expression or the saying that a person can drown in a lake with an average depth of an inch.
Yes,
you've heard that before, right?
Yeah, I have.
And the reason. Yeah, and the reason for that is it's what we call statistically, and I'm a stat guy, is called variance or standard error or standard deviation. It may be, a quarter inch in most of the lake and then 20 feet deep in one part.
Right.
And drowned in that part. So, I've never seen this stat, and I wonder if you guys have ever seen it, and I've wondered about this for quite a while, but your conversation yesterday kind of got me thinking about it again. And it's something I could calculate myself, but I wonder if people have ever looked at sort of the standard deviation or the variance, say, in points per game in the NBA. So you could look at Poole and say, what, he averaged 20.4 a game.
Mm-hmm.
What was the variance around that? And my guess is it's a pretty high variance because he seemed like a guy that scored, 34 one night and 4 the next.
Gotcha.
Whereas someone like Steph, much more consistent.
Yes.
And if you kind of extrapolated that statistic, you could start to look at what the variance is during the regular season versus the playoffs versus home versus away. And you could really start to see who are the consistent players and who are the inconsistent players. And I've never seen that stat, but it seems like it would be an interesting one for people to look at.
I actually agree. And and thanks for the call, Pat. Appreciate it. That's kind of what I was getting at with Klay Thompson this past year. If a guy's a 40% shooter from 3-point range, and over a 3-game sample, wouldn't you want him to go 4 for 10, 4 for 10, 4 for 10 from 3-point range, as opposed to 8 for 10, 2 for 10, 2 for 10? Like they both come out to 40%, but I like our chances to win the game with Klay or whoever going 4 for 10 every night instead of 2 for 10, 2 for 10, 8 for 10. Now, you're probably going to win the 8 for 10. There's no doubt about that. But what about the 2 for 10s?
Yeah, you have a better chance at going 3-0 with 4
you would think
similar shooting games, and then you have a better chance of probably losing the 2 if Klay is 2 for 10. No, I hear what you're saying, and I think the standard deviation is it's interesting. Like, for example, and maybe injury had something to do with this, but Joel Embiid had the largest points per game drop-off by an MVP from regular season to postseason in history last year.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I think he averaged 30 or 31 points per game in the regular season. He was incredible. And in the playoffs, he was down to 24. Like, that's a massive drop-off. And it's one of the reasons I think James Harden catches a lot of hell, because during his glory years, he would put up 30-plus point per games all the time. And then in the playoffs, there would not be very many of them. Or there would be, like this past season, in their second round series in which they lost. He had 2 40-point games. They won. The rest of them they lost, and they fell in 6. Like, you need that consistency from your superstars. And to the caller's point, I do think you get that more with Stephen Curry than the majority of superstars. Like, you don't see a ton of stinkers from Steph, and when you do, they lose, but you don't see a lot of those come playoff time.
I think everybody would agree Steph's more steady and Clay's more streaky over the course of their careers. I don't think that's a compliment or an insult to either guy.
But I think it's also why sometimes guys get lost. Like, for example, LeBron James has averaged 25 or 26 points for like his entire career.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have those 50 burgers. He also doesn't have single-digit scoring games. Like, he is very consistent.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it hard to evaluate how good of a scorer he is because, he just scores 25 a night. And then he also gives you 10 or 8. Like, I guess Jokic kind of does that a little bit, although he's got larger scoring performances. But because players do other things like rebound or assist or block shots, if those are gaudy, then in a way you're almost expecting those points per game to just jump, and they don't.
Exactly. Travis Irby on the YouTube
Is
chat.
that Irby?
Or Irby?
I think if that's the Travis Irby I'm thinking of, I played baseball with him in Little League.
You got to Google it.
Really? Oh, how about that?
There could be 2 of them.
See, Travis says 40% is 40%. Yeah, I think he's trolling there.
He might be.
I mean, to me, there's a big difference between how you get to 40%.